I think we need some ZZ Top. So,
ZZ Top will work.
or some
Yeah.
Queen. Some Queen. Get some Queen.
It works
in there.
for me. It all works. Okay.
Yeah,
Hey, we're
fat
live
bottom
now.
girls. There we go.
We're good to go here. Hey, folks, welcome to The Power of You with Blaine and Dolan, with Dolan and Blaine, The Power of You. We're back.
We're back.
Did you miss us?
Hello.
Did you miss us?
It's live. I know, and it's live, and we're here.
We're here. You're
Right.
tanned and
Thank
looking
you.
quite dapper and debonair and all
Thank
the
you.
things that kind of go along with dapper and debonair.
I'm feeling well dappered.
Well dappered, yes.
Well dappered.
Cruise in the
And,
Caribbean, 9 days. Wow.
9 days in the Caribbean, 7 port stops, 1, 2, 3 snorkel trips, 1 jump off a waterfall, hike through caves, 14 hot dogs.
You've upped the number. You've upped the number.
I had to do the count this morning again and go, well, maybe I was a little conservative. Truthfully, I overconsumed on hot dogs. So,
Not to mention the red wine.
yeah, that too.
Yeah,
That
but
too.
that was expected. The hot dogs I was surprised by.
That too. When they hand you that ship card that says, just show them the card. They'll give you anything.
Anything. It's all free.
Just show them the card. Yeah. There's it. Yeah.
yeah. Quote unquote. Yeah.
Yeah. Show them the card.
Show them the card.
Show them the card.
Hey, what are we doing today?
We're doing growth and innovation.
This is one of the 4 pillar elements. We've done. This is the third session on the 4 pillars.
Yeah. We did trust.
Yeah.
We've done communication, and today's growth and innovation, and it all hooks into that theme that we talk about all the time, which is what do you do with your how do you scale your business?
Yep.
What do you do?
Yeah. What are the elements? What are the framings? What are the tools that you can actually bring into this thing? So, what the tools? You mean we're actually going to be practical with this?
My goodness gracious!
Don't let my mother hear you saying that.
I know.
So, growth and innovation.
Yeah, when I was thinking about this, it's kind of coming back in and shaking off 9 days of being on a boat and having today's like the first day the room's not moving anymore. You know how that
I do know that one.
You come back, and your body's still going, wait a minute, hang on, where am I? I was thinking about it, so from a leader's perspective, when you're leaders and managers, because a lot of this applies to both of those kinds of individuals, leaders and managers, what are the things that are going to what are you thinking about, right? Well, there's the worries that you have going into growth. What prevents it? Because we're going to spend some time talking about mindset. And you get concerned. Well, what if it doesn't work and sets us back? We're brought up with that kind of punitive thing, right?
And the what if,
and am I the right
gremlins?
Yeah, imposter syndrome. Am I the right person to lead this? Who's going to follow me? Basically, when I start charging the hill and turn around, is anybody going to be behind me?
Yeah. And if I look back there and there's nobody there, what happened? Where did I lose them?
Yeah, exactly. But I told them.
Yeah, we're going to go take that hill. They're going, yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah, no. Hey, we'll watch you do this. Let's see how you do.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, and then just as we get into innovation, one of the things we'll talk a little bit about is one of the things I think people have a challenge with innovation is that willingness to let go.
Yeah.
Let me go. Trust me, grasshopper. Let go.
I can make this happen.
Yeah. And are people going to think I'm nuts? And it's kind of like believing that one announcement or email I told them.
Yeah, I sent the email to everybody.
I had that conversation yesterday with the client. He goes, well, I sent an email. It's like, okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Did anybody read it? I don't know.
But I sent it. They're supposed to read it if it comes from me.
I sent it, by golly. So this is today. This is to address some of these things and much more.
Much more. That one about what will the board, investors, or my peers think?
Yeah.
And we're looking at this through the lens of innovation. I was working with a CEO a number of years ago, and we were in a brainstorming. I was coaching him. I'd been working with him for some time, and he looked at the market, the sector in which they were positioned, and he had this wild hair of an idea that when he said it, he lit up like a Christmas tree. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. It was kind of like, oh my God, what if this could? And what killed it was he started questioning what was his board going to think, because his board, in fact, was not just a governing board, but it was a board that was heavily weighted with investors. Yeah. And so they were looking to protect their investment. And this was a bet the farm sort of a play. So boy, I look back at this, and he and I've had subsequent conversations. Yeah. If he had pulled the trigger on that thing and had gotten the board behind him,
yeah,
they could have disrupted that space and been off to the races.
Yes.
Never happened though. But boy, it was a gorgeous idea. It was a gorgeous idea. So that's like you said, this is some of the stuff that we're going to be looking at here, because it is a question of scaling. Yeah. How do you scale to that next level and not incrementally move the needle on what already is, but how do you scale to that next jump?
Yeah.
Next level, and not have to be linear in the process. If you can do a quantum phase shift, all of a sudden we're in a different place.
Right. And you have to be, but we were talking about this because it's funny because we could spend our whole time just right here on this slide. You were talking about last week, you were in New York, right? You're at NASDAQ.
Yeah. I was,
the IPO summit.
Yeah.
And one of the things I think that's important is which hooks into that, your comment, Blaine, is that what got you here today isn't going to get you there tomorrow.
Right.
And that terror barrier, there's a barrier.
Yeah.
That happens there. We'll get into it in some of this stuff. But there's that barrier, right? I'm worried about what are they going to FOMO.
Yeah.
FOMO, fear of missing out, and FOPO.
Yep.
What are they going to fear of other people's opinions? So
all that good kind of stuff. So you're not going to do this by yourself. Whatever it is that this is, it's not going to happen by yourself. I mean, that's kind of what that previous slide speaks to. And you've been studying, Ed, for some time here. You've got a lifelong relationship with Delta. Is necessarily go into the story about why that is, but it is your airline of choice, bar none.
It is, bar none, for very deeply personal reasons. But no, what leapt out was I listened to a dissertation to a lecture from Ed, and he was teaching around leading through change, right? And Delta said, and it started with Twin Towers to the bubble popping, the stock market bubble popping, to COVID and all the ups and downs and having to mothball fleets and going through a Chapter 11 bankruptcy reorg, taking Delta through that, and then now coming out way on the other side, now years later, as the number one airline in the world, right? Through 2 hostile acquisition attempts to take over. And what got him through that growth and an innovation was his people.
Mm-hmm.
And the mindset that he established inside of the organization that drove that willingness for the people to be inspired and motivated to help move the company forward. And it was he just said one sentence: people are your biggest asset. No matter what people tell you, Pete, that's your asset.
Yeah. And people. Leadership is a relationship sport. Now,
what
I find fascinating about this phrase, and everybody's heard this thing, people are our biggest asset, people are our greatest resource, those sorts of things. Stop and think about that language for just a minute. Resources in any organization are meant to be used. Idle resources are the bane of every organization. Resources are meant to be used.
Yeah.
So when you're saying people are our greatest resource, the experience oftentimes associated with that on the people side of it is we're being used. Make no mistake, we're being used. Yeah. It had better be for something that is significantly meaningful to them. Otherwise, you're going to have a workforce that is not going to be your champion. You're going to be getting compliance at best. The other side of that has to do with people are our biggest asset. If you look at a balance sheet and you've got assets on your balance sheet, you also have a tax line item that is called depreciation. Assets are depreciated over time. So our language will set in motion some things here that may not be what we want. We've got people that are being used and depreciated, and we wonder how come we can't get to that next level of innovation and growth.
Yep.
Starts with mindset.
Yep.
Mindset around that language.
Very true. Very true. That's the lean in on today. So
that's the lean in. So we've got two models that we always work with. The focus for this session, next session, and the two previous session is the 4 pillars. Following the 4 pillar conversation, beginning in mid-May, we're going to be doing a deep dive on the leadership universe. But just real quickly here, this is the universe in which all leaders operate. So this is kind of a contextual frame, if you will. It's the sandbox we play in. Most leadership development conversations and most leadership development work takes place at the why, what, and how, the vision, strategy, tactics level. That's what almost all conversation around leadership comes into play. And that's where the period gets landed too. Vision, yep, period. Strategy, yep, period. Tactics, yep, period. How come it didn't work? Well, you drop below why, now you're in the domain of mindset. 95% of all of our behavior by the time we're 30 years of age is driven by the subconscious domain that we call mindset. It's literally out of sight, out of mind, because it's subconscious, but it's driving everything. So our work is in the domain of mindset. And the reason we move into mindset has to do with creativity, and it has to do with innovation, being different. You can be better at these top 3 levels. As a matter of fact, that's what a lot of focus on leadership is about, let's be better at setting vision. Let's be better at executing on strategy, which is the tactics. But you want to be different. In today's environment, we have to be different as leaders. And if we're willing to explore that mindset, what that opens up is this thing that we call spirit or soul, which is where innovation and creativity actually lives. And Carl Jung, the philosopher, at one point in time said, without the use of the imagination, nothing of consequences ever come into being. And imagination lives at that threshold between mindset and spirit. Most people don't know how to use imagination effectively. So a lot of our work is, 98% probably of our work is in this mindset, spirit, and soul area. Yeah. And then the 4 pillars actually informs the nature of that work when we start jumping into it from a pragmatic perspective.
Yeah. And we've talked about, we mentioned it earlier, we've talked about trust and autonomy. And if you haven't listened to, if you're listening to today, or if you're listening to this downstream on one of the channels that this is live on, we're live on everywhere on the planet. I think there's 1 million people out there listening right now.
Absolutely.
Gotta be at least 6. But when you go through it, we need to go back and listen to trust and autonomy. I'm not going to kind of dig into it a little bit, but trust is that foundation. That is that cornerstone pillar that gives people the willingness to try, to be autonomous. Autonomy is simply stated in my mind as it's a willingness to try because I'm trusted. I know you've got my back. And communication and transparency is that statement. Somebody said this the other day to me in a comment, and I called him on it. He said, well, to be honest, and I kind of went, whoa.
Why
So
together?
Is this the first time you're being honest with me?
Yeah.
So what's going on here? So from a communication and transparency perspective, it is that commitment that you have to be transparent. And transparent means a great word that is a corollary to transparency is vulnerability. To be vulnerable, to be willing to say, I don't know, I'm not sure. And we're going to use all that today to hook into growth and innovation. And then next week, we'll talk about systems of accountability. We'll get into all that stuff.
So basically, this is in this case, it's a monologue. We've got an opportunity for you to have a dialogue with us later, but this is a monologue right now. What we're looking at here is leadership. So we're talking about Dolan and I both. We've got about 90 years plus worth of experience in this thing that we call leadership development, this space. And we work with clients all over the world, some of the largest companies in the world, as well as some small little startups. And when you start looking at what leadership is, you have to understand what a leader does. A leader causes movement. That's what a leader does. They cause things to shift. They cause things to move. Very simplistic definition. It's free of any kind of personality trait or a behavior or anything else. It's just, this is what a leader does. They cause movement. Now, what's interesting to us about that definition is a recognition that it's literally impossible to step into any kind of an environment and not cause something to move. Just by your mere presence, people have to adjust. They have to move. So you're always causing movement. And by definition, everybody is a leader. We're all always causing movement everywhere we go. So we're not interested in you becoming, recognizing whether you're a leader or not. You are a leader. We're just going to take that off the table. You are a leader.
Yeah.
Our question is, are you effective? And effectiveness has to do with causing movement in pursuit of something that is important to us, which is where this definition comes into play here. Leadership is the activity, the kind of leadership we're looking at is the activity of influencing others, not command and control. It's not cracking a whip or carrot and stick or any of that stuff. It's a state of being, influencing other people just by who I am, how I am, in order to co-create the ideas. It's now, my idea has now moved to your head and your heart. And we co-create this thing because it's meaningful to both of us. Ownership is transferred. Coordinated movement. By literally movement, we move into territory we've never been before, particularly if we're setting high goals for ourselves. We don't know how to get there. So as a consequence of that, it's guaranteed that you're going to step on each other's toes. You can't not do that because people have, we've got preferences about how we navigate the unknown.
Yeah.
So coordinated movement is part of the dance here. How do you actually do this? And this is where communication and trust come into play. Transparency comes into play with this as well. In pursuit of something that is meaningful, a pursuit of a worthy ideal. Now, this is not your vision. This is deeper than the vision that's articulated in most cases when we're looking at leadership. This has to do with something else. And it's that ideal that we're looking at that moves us into, why do we do this? For the sake of what? For the sake of what? Yeah. That for the sake of what is not your vision. So, your vision could be, we're now the market sector leader. We have increased our revenues by 20% year over year. Hot damn. Okay. That does not have a for the sake of what in it that is meaningful to the pallet driver or forklift driver that's moving pallets from point A to point B. They're going, whatever. I didn't see a bump in my paycheck.
Like it means nothing to me. When I go home at night, I still have the same number of hot dogs in my fridge.
Exactly.
How does that matter?
How does that matter? Yeah. So you have this is where the idea of co-creation comes into play. You have to land on, for the sake of what is this goal, objective, vision meaningful? And it has to do with meaning, and meaning generates, if you've done it well, emotional engagement. So this for the sake of what is the answer to what matters. And it literally becomes the worthy ideal that we pursue. And it's not a one size fits all situation. We may be going after the same goal, objective, or vision, but the worthy ideal for me in achieving that is going to be different than the worthy ideal for Dolan. Because we're different people, we pay attention to different things, but we can see the link. If we get that out there, what do I get to have, do, or be that I wouldn't get to have, do, or be if we didn't move there? That's the worthy ideal. It's kind of like, ooh, God, that'll get me out of bed in the morning.
Yeah. That's that moment of inspiration.
Yep.
The other part is motivation.
Yep.
So another day, another time. But so if you're listening to this, so you'll hear when Blaine and I talk about do power reviews, we do these two slides every time. And the reason why we do these two times is repetition repetition, 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 repetition. So if you get a chance, go back and just pause the video on that leadership slide and do a snap of that. Grab that screen and make it yours. Go do something with it. That component, the components inside of this with influencing others, removing command and control, creating together, co-creating, coordinated movement, and that worthy ideal, which is described in the for the sake of what slide next, is critical. We've talked about trust and autonomy, and we've talked about communication, transparency, vulnerability. But to get to growth and innovation, you have to have mastery of these two slides. Without mastery of these two slides, you can't get through the gate. Trust is a single player game. Communication is a single player game. Growth and innovation is a team sport. So you have to, not to lean, wait a minute, where's my milk crate?
Where are you after, huh?
Where's my milk crate? How am I getting my milk crate? No, there you, but I want to make sure, because that's very important. When you think of it, mastery of those two concepts leads you into the ability to grow. And yeah, there's single player components, but it leads you into the ability, not capability, ability to grow. Capability is what you do with it.
Yes.
So,
and it's all, again, we're looking here at how do you scale your business, not incrementally, but how do you scale it in the context of phase shifting? All of a sudden you bump to a whole different level. Yeah. And it didn't take you years to get there. You just did some things extraordinarily well that allowed for something else to happen that pop, you're now here. And you look back and you go, how did we get here from there? It can be magical. It can seem magical, but it requires people.
And it will happen. It's funny. Was talking to somebody before I left for the cruise and consumed as many hot dogs as I did. Was talking with someone, and we were talking about, and they were telling me, yeah, but I run a nonprofit. And my answer was, still scale. It's still growth, right? Because if you're focusing on a philanthropy, so don't get confused between for-profit, nonprofit. It's the intentionality of the growth.
Yep. Everything wants to grow. Everything in nature looks for ways to more fully express what it is.
I know. I grew on my cruise.
No. Yes, you did. I'm not saying anything.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, Lordy.
Onward and upward.
Speaking of growth.
On that note, so,
segue.
Yeah, a nice segue. Thank you very much. So growth, there's keywords in this, and you guys have all read this, quick as once Blaine hit go, it's up there. But one of the challenges I think that leaders face is they lose track of where you're seeking sustainable growth. That's a key. That's if we take this apart just a little bit. And it's the fact that businesses evolve. It's that thing we were talking about earlier in the week, Blaine, about what got you there.
Won't get you there.
Won't get you there. And the alignment, and this goes back to that definition of leadership, and the alignment with strategy, culture, and execution are aligned. Mm-hmm. Without that alignment, you can't get to velocity.
Yep.
You will be Sisyphus.
Yeah, rolling that big rock.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that, by the way, yeah, Sisyphus was it was a mythology thing. It had nothing to do with doctors. It was something entirely different.
Something entirely different. One of the first two words in this definition here, sustainable growth. This is the one that I think gets people wrapped around the axle, pretty frequently. Yeah, they read sustainable growth, and they in their mind the default is incremental, 10% over time, 10%, whatever it is, incremental growth. Sustainable growth, in the way that we're looking at it here, and this is why strategy, culture, and execution come into play, is we're looking at developing the capacity, the internal capacity in your organization to continuously start over. Start over. You got a wildly successful product. Start planning to kill it. Literally, start planning to kill that sucker so that you can replace it with something else. Okay. Now it will have a life cycle. You're not going to pull the trigger on it prematurely, but sustainable growth. How do we start over?
Right.
Do we have the capacity to do that? Our people are our greatest asset. We need to work with them to develop that capacity.
Yeah, it's fun. It's just, I'm sorry, I was chuckling while you said that because I had this vision of you at the IPO summit having the conversation about a company's going from private through IPO. And one of my favorite things when Zoom went public, right, Eric and when they went public, and having known Eric in those days, those old days, this it was one of the questions that I heard him asked was they were an IPO and they had just run the gong and everything was going good. And somebody asked, so what's your exit strategy? And it's like, constantly be thinking of that, constantly be thinking of that development step. What's the exit strategy? What am I moving towards?
Yeah. Exit strategy, not just for the company, but exit strategy for the product, exit strategy for the market sector that you're in. Yeah. What?
Right. For you.
For you. Yeah. I mean, when we're talking about leadership in this context, in a scaling context, you'll hear both Dolan and I say this over and over and over again. It's not about you becoming a better leader, because a better at what you're already doing will just get you better versions of what you already have. You need to learn how to become a different leader, develop the capacity to continuously start over. What does different mean? What's your exit strategy from your current state of being as a leader, and what emerges at that next iteration? That's what growth is about.
Yeah.
That's what we're looking at.
Yeah. And innovation, right? I love that the constant thing around innovation is creating value. It's rethinking. There's a great video out there. Gosh darn, I'll have to find it sometime and we'll share it in a link for everybody, about a CEO that took his 5-year-old granddaughter to work with him. And it's called Question Everything. And she asked him, what is this for? What is that for? Why do they have windows on the cars? Blah, blah. And took him through everything. And he actually took his whole team through a Question Everything exercise, which was amazing. But it is creating by rethinking systems, question everything. And we'll talk about questioning in a little bit. Challenging assumptions. Innovation is that thing about what can we do differently? What have I learned? And then how do I move my insights to action? And critically, that harkening back again to that slide around the definition of leadership, empowering is a big word.
Yeah.
Right. And that there's the definition of what I would call empowering is in that paragraph around the definition of leadership. That is empowerment. So when you're empowering your team, you got to empower your team, empower them to think creatively. That's trust and autonomy, to act boldly, to fall down. And you want all of that without them wandering off in the field. And we'll kind of get into that a little bit, but without losing sight of the mission. So that's the kind of the difference between them.
So when you bring these together, the way that you leverage the concepts, and they are concepts until they're actionable, the concepts of growth and innovation, is you drop in mindset. And at the intersection in this Venn diagram of all three of those places, that's where the magic happens. You want to be able to bring them all together. Okay. Growth and innovation. If you take mindset out of that, you're actually going to be just literally looking at iterations. It's an iterative approach. And it gets boring real quick. You drop mindset into that and you start unbundling stuff. It's kind of like, God, we've never thought of that. We questioning things that we've never thought of questioning before.
Yes.
Whole stuff, that whole stuff, technical term, starts to inform how we innovate. Yeah,
it was good. It's funny you say that, because that's just, what kind of came to mind is you're without having that mindset, because mindset plays a key component into this, and all the things that hook into that. Without that, then it's ungrowth.
Yeah, it's ungrowth. I like it.
It's ungrowth and uninnovation. You will disrupt your business.
Not in a healthy way.
No, you will ungrow. Which is, I don't know, we make up words as we go along.
We'll put that in the Oxford dictionary. We're going to bypass Webster here. We'll go
something like that.
Straight to Oxford.
Something.
So what are some mindset, when we're talking about mindset, again, let's define the term very colloquially, very briefly here. It's the belief systems, the experiences that have been hardwired, the meaning structures that have been hardwired, the values things that I grew up with as family of origin, of culture, religion, politics. I mean, all of that stuff that gets put into my brain, and then I forget about it. But it's all these synapses and all these neurons are wired together. That's the mindset. It's literally out of sight, out of mind, and it dictates 95% of the behavior that most adults over the age of 30 actually engage in. It's that powerful. We're always going to have a mindset. And the key word here has to do with set. My mind is set in a certain structure or in a certain kind of dynamic. We want to be able to unfreeze that so that something else can begin to piece itself together again. So the kind of mindset that will typically fuel business growth is vision-led. Future. When we think of vision-led, what we're really doing here is we're talking about possibilities. Yeah.
Yes.
That worthy ideal out there. What does that make possible? Leaders bring possibility into reality. That's essentially what they do. So growth requires clarity, a clarity of that ideal. And, that for the sake of what? I think for me, and this is just for me, the reality distortion field that was talked about in reference to Steve Jobs.
Right.
Vision-led thinking. It's kind of like, you don't have to buy into it and even think it's something that we can make happen in the next 3 years. But when you were in Steve Jobs' area of influence, when you were actually working with him, he had the ability to distort people's experience of what current reality was and replace it with what a possible reality could actually be.
Yeah.
And he was that clear, not just cognitively clear, intellectually clear, linguistically clear. He was emotionally clicked. He was locked into it. He felt it. There's an energy in that. We communicate with energy. We don't communicate with words. We use words to convey things, but energy is what actually moves people. So vision-led thinking, locking into that for the sake of what, that gets me up and out of bed in the morning.
Yeah. We had to did a whole session on trust, but just the two key things that came to my mind thinking about this was just, you got to trust yourself to let go. And there's intimacy that it has to between you and your team, and you got to know stuff you got to know. You have to trust. Your trust starts with you. You have to trust yourself to let go. Yep. And trust your team to rise. And there's been experiences in leading teams and within organizations, and there's the rule about an individual will only rise to the expectations set for them.
Yep.
And if you trust your team and you set that expectation and it's clear, I think you will be amazed at what people will rise to, especially when you tie to inspiration and co-creation and really focus in on that. But empower through trust.
Power through trust, and then communicate for alignment. And just a real quick note on there: consistent, context-rich communication that eliminates confusion. And here's where confusion starts to creep in. It's when we start using words like "that was wrong," "that was bad."
Oh yeah,
right, wrong, good, bad. Values.
Yes.
Values informed or statements that are informed by personal values. That's good or bad. That's right or wrong. Communicating for alignment is literally what worked, what didn't work. Let's do more of what worked and less of what didn't work.
It's scale.
Exactly. And when you get people to let go of their death grip on, well, this is the right way to do it, then you have the possibility for alignment to occur. When you're looking at co-creating coordinated movement.
Yeah.
You don't want to be linguistically framing things as good, bad, right, or wrong. For the sake of what? Did this work or not work? Did this work or not work? And moving us towards that for the sake of what? That's how you communicate for alignment. And essentially, it's all about relationship. So one of the things that you can pay attention to as a leader is, how do people feel about themselves when they're in your presence?
Oh, yeah.
Do they feel empowered? Do they feel, like they have permission to be creative? Do they have permission to say no? Relationship quality. Transactions are what we do, relationships are what we create. Almost all conversations in organizations are organized around transactional output. Did I get it on time? Did I get it on time? What are the measurables? These are all transactions.
Yeah.
That's not where the juice is.
Yeah.
Now, you need to have those conversations, but yeah, that better not be
Absolutely.
all you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really like that from that, transactions are what we do, relationships are what we create. And it's we talked about trust, right? 5 to 7 interactions, 3 to 6 months. Develop
Mhm.
trust. That's the math behind how our monkey brain works. At least as guys, our monkey brain works. So, and then the adaptability with focus. You be open to change. Things I've never ever in my 40 plus years in my career led a project or an engagement that went the way I planned it.
Yep.
People change, stuff changes. So be open to change, but don't lose track of that solid piece, the mission, the values, the core values, the team, the relationships that you build. That clarity, and by being adaptable to that, you give yourself permission, which is that nervous part with driving growth, right? You give yourself courage to make good decisions or the best possible decisions that you can. Not all decisions are perfect. Matter of fact,
Most of them are.
statistically, that's kind of how it goes. And direction. And the steps that are here, kind of, I think on this slide, Blaine, really kind of lean into one of the things we talk about with clients and other things that we do together is we talk about, when you're communicating, clarity breeds confidence. Without good context rich communication and consistency, people will make up their own story.
Absolutely. And then you got to run it all over the place.
Oh my goodness gracious. And then we always hear about remember there was a commercial years ago about a guy on a horse and he was riding and he was herding cats. It was the cat herder commercial on TV. It was a Super Bowl commercial. And we'll find that someday and we'll put it up here. But you become the cat herder rather than moving everything forward. So all of these may read like, and there's a lot more to this, but they may read like individual points of light. You have vision-led thinking, yes, empower through, but they all weave together
And
into that
ultimately
key
what they
word,
were-
the
yeah.
mindset.
Yeah. And what they end up generating is a possibility of innovation.
Yeah.
So I mean, there is a logic to the way we put these slides together. Mindset is growth, but the growth is empowered by and fueled by innovation.
Exactly.
So you get that previous slide kind of lined up, and now you've got something out here where you can begin to play that gets fun. I mean, innovation, creativity. Yeah, it's not a one and done. If you've got this wired right, things just start to get really fun in an organization. And you can have fun in your business. You really can. It can be fun to go to work. Yeah, if something like this is in place here. Curiosity over control. And going back to your question, question everything. Yeah, let's let go of having all the answers all the time. You can, well, tell me what you think. I know I've got a couple of ideas around stuff, but tell me what you think about this. Let's explore this a little bit. Yeah, curiosity over control. We get, I'm going to, this previous slide here, adaptability with focus. You want to have a rock solid what are we going for, but you want to have an incredibly fluid how. And that's what this begins to do.
Yes.
When you got a fluid how, what worked yesterday is probably not going to work tomorrow.
No.
But it worked yesterday. But what could we explore here? And then you continuously come back to communicating the possibility. And this again comes back to clarity. Leaders move possibility into reality. Now there's a migration. It goes possibility in the leader's mind to probability in the manager's portfolio, because the management is where the actual transactions take place. And then you end up with a reality. Possibility into probability into reality. Leadership, management, ta-da. the pot of gold at the end here. But it
Yeah.
starts with communicating that possibility and keeping it going forward. Yeah, and to your point earlier, I too cannot think of a project I've ever been a part of or set up that went like we were planning it at the beginning. The minute we opened the doors, something went sideways. Just that quick. It's kind of, what do you mean the link was a team, it was a Google link and not a Zoom link? How did that happen?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Things don't go that way. I could consistently remember many meetings where you walk into the room and you've got two teams and suddenly you discover they've actually never met.
Yeah.
Not only have they not met, but they don't even like each other
Right.
because of some legacy person who did something dumb and they're not even with the company anymore. So yes. So yeah, communicating, but we'll go on. Fail forward. It just makes me smile thinking of those days. And still happens. Fail forward fast. Look, one of the things with innovation, I think, and we talked a little bit about this with the previous slide, Blaine, is that word velocity.
Mm-hmm.
And this comes into, and we'll get into systems of accountability and accountability, how people interact together in an accountable nature, not physical systems of accountability, but it is that willingness to see where am I pragmatically and call the ball.
Yeah.
And be willing to test something out to decide, where are we? Is this something that we're good? And fail forward fast, but continue to fail forward. Edison was probably the epitome of failing forward.
Yep.
Right. To get to the light bulb and then create choice. This was the intention behind this bullet. When I was thinking about this was when you're working from an innovation perspective, you have two choices. You can do something different, or you can become a part of the problem.
Yep. Yeah. And where that shows up is when you start buying into the excuse that you hear from people about, we can't do this because, and you kind of collapse into that and go, well, God, I guess you're right. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah.
And you collapse into that. People give you, from a leadership perspective, people give you what they perceive you're willing to accept. They will never give you what you ask for. Now, if they are giving you what you ask for, it's probably because there's an alignment here.
Right.
But if you understand that you're only getting that because they perceive that is where you're planting a flag. Yeah, this is important. This, for the sake of what is what we're doing. Oh, he's or she's serious about that. I guess we'll find a way to make that's where innovation comes into play here. We're going to be on the moon by the end of the decade.
Yeah.
My Boston accent, decade.
Decade. Yeah, I know. I was with you. I caught that. Yeah, decade.
And how are we going to do that? I don't know. Have we ever done it before? Nope. Do we have all the technology? Not a chance. But we're going to do it. But
we're going.
We're going. We're going to, and we're going to bring the guys back safely.
Yeah. Yeah, we're going. It's funny because that from that point, it's that there was a video shared with me and by our friend in Uganda, Mr. Ntwatwa sent me a video not long ago, Bob Proctor.
Right. Yep.
And it was the hourglass. And Bob was talking about the top of the hourglass is the future. The piece, because the sand is going down through gravity. The piece in the middle is where you are today. And the bottom is where you were in the past. You can't do anything about that.
Right.
When we talk about lead from the future, know that the future, we can't predict that that's where change exists. Change lives in that domain. Stay focused, stay grounded on today, stay grounded on that pinch point where the sand is flowing, but make decisions based as if that future already exists. And I think a lot of leaders lose, in my mind, that's a really important statement.
It is.
Leaders lose track of lose faith in their ability to move forward with innovation because they're not thinking about it as if it already exists. This is what it looks like on the way to success.
Right.
Yep. Not to quote our friend Mary Morrissey. This is what it looks like on your way to success.
Yeah. If you weren't on this road, you would not be running into these problems, these obstacles. You would not be having this experience unless you were on the road to success. This is what it looks like. So part of, specifically what you're speaking to here is, as a leader, you need to learn how to speak, think, and behave as if the future were already here. because people will keep throwing in your face, but it's not. And you go,
But
got it. And
yeah.
And
Oh yeah.
if
And
it was here, how would we be behaving? What would we be doing? How would we be speaking to that vendor and or that customer or each other if that future were here? Let's do that. That's how we
right.
bring that future in.
Yeah. And that in turn hooks back into for the sake of what?
For the sake of what? Now, if you're doing this, you'll know it. But typically, you're not going to be doing it. And there are some
You may not know
symptoms.
it.
There are some symptoms that will show up pretty quickly that can give you an indication that you are off course.
I was going to put a picture of Dr. McCoy on this. He's dead, Jim. Anyway,
Yeah, exactly.
he's dead, Jim. Sorry.
Damn it, Jim, I'm just a doctor.
Spock, you pointy. Anyway, so but these are just things that and again, as a leader, when we self-evaluate as leaders and we look at our organization and we're thinking about what we're trying to accomplish, growth and innovation in this context of this conversation today. You think about it, when you see these symptoms, right? There's stagnation, there's incremental progress, but you're seeing your competitors go by you. And by the way, the moment you plant your flag on top of the hill, somebody's coming up the hill behind you.
Yep.
So there's that iterative process that goes through that. So don't get complacent. Teams, they're risk averse, they're disengaged, and they're risk averse because they don't have there's all of these things that go into that, but these are symptoms that tell you you're off on the growth mindset. These are symptoms that give you the ability to go back and say, okay, so what action do I take as the leader to move my team, move my organization forward so that we build a structure that can support an outcome that is not this, everything is the status quo. Status quo is good enough. That's fine. I'm comfortable with status quo.
Comfortable. And
I like my status quo.
People love comfort.
I love my status quo. I wear it every day.
Yes, I do. And it smells good too.
It does. It smells like Old Spice.
Or hot dogs.
Or hot dogs, one or the other.
Well, and when things start to go off the rails, I remember I was doing, and this goes back, oh goodness, this company's out of business now, Bethlehem Steel.
Oh my gosh.
Bethlehem Steel. This goes back to the old days, back in the 1980s. I was doing a consulting project, and I was working with one of the senior people in one of these plants. And we were talking about empowerment, about, your people know what they're doing. Yeah, give them a little bit of rain. Now, this guy was an old former Marine colonel. And he looked like John Wayne. He talked like John Wayne. People called him John behind his back. That wasn't his name. But so he's going, okay, empower. I'll give these guys their head. So in his all hand meeting, every Monday they had an all hand meeting. He's going, okay, you guys, I'm not going to run this meeting. It's yours to do. You just kind of let me. I'll be here to advise and consult. And then he sat back. Now these guys had never been given permission to do anything on their own before. So he sat back and he had a cigar in his mouth and chomping on it. And for 5 minutes, nothing moved. Nobody said a word. People started to squirm. It's kind of like, well, what are we supposed to do? Oh, Jesus Christ. What's going on here? Yeah. And all of a sudden, you could see the color in his face starting to move redder and redder and redder. Boom. Big explosion. I said that you guys could take it. And the default for many leaders is to grab the reins of control real quickly if things don't start to produce. And that's not going to work out real well. So how do you delegate effectively? That's essentially what we're looking at here. So one of the symptoms of not a growth mindset is that people wait to be told what to do. That's not my job, man. You didn't pay me to think. That sort of stuff. You tell me what to do. Yeah, you're the boss. You tell me what you expect of me, and I'll go find a way to do that within what I'm comfortable doing.
Yes. Oh yeah. And it's very much. Number three, failing to communicate the big picture. Right. This happens all the time. It's that thing, Blaine, where there is a mission, there's a vision, there's a meeting, there's an email. Everybody's in, there's a rah, 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 rah. They walk out the door, and 2 hours later, there's a declining curve, right?
Yeah.
The day-to-day, the day-to-day is okay. Now we're back in it. And pretty soon we're completely misaligned, right? The mission and vision still is out there, but we're focused on this stuff over here. So I'm doing all these things that don't actually align with the direction that said this is where we're going, because I got to do these things. I got to do the do.
Got to do the do.
That's what you pay me for, is do the do.
And we had talked about in one of the earlier Power of You sessions about decision making.
Yeah.
About how the decisions that really drive an organization's direction are the tiny little ones, the 98% of decisions that are made in the field, on the job, on the line, day in and day out, in service of getting the job done. They're not made in reflection to or in reference to strategic goals or for the sake of what. If they were, you might find that all of a sudden people are making decisions and choices in a different way. Yeah, somebody might come to you and go, we've always done it this way, but given what we said was important here, how about if we try this? That's a sign that innovation and growth are beginning to take root as a mindset.
Yeah. And last, you just don't want to hear it. I'm not going to ask. First of all, I'm not going to ask for feedback. Because if I ask for feedback, there is the perception that I am not in control. So I know I'm right all the time. Well, Linda can't hear me, so
my wife will never tell me that. But.
She can't hear me, so I can say that. I'm always in control. Always. But there's that I avoid my feedback. I avoid asking the question, what could I have done differently that could have moved us forward in a different manner?
Yep.
And that sees that, there's a word in here that's the fixed mindset. Remember you talked earlier about the definition of mindset, which could functionally be called a paradigm. There's a bunch of things that get hooked into that, right? So I'm fixed into that. I've got a fixed mindset. And the results of that result in complacency, no improvement. We're not going to get to the mark because I'm not going to ask questions. I'm just expecting it.
And so the company becomes today a little bit of a reflection of what it was yesterday. And over times, it's real hard to distinct last year from this year. There's no growth. These are symptoms that will tell you are not growing. You're not set up from a mindset perspective to actually grow in the way that you might like to grow.
Yeah.
And part of what happens with it, we talked about this. If you're set up to grow, you will have innovative behavior. But if you're not set up to grow, you're going to have some symptoms of where innovation is not allowed to even begin to take root, let alone have a seed planted.
Okay? Yeah. And and you guys can read all the symptoms that are on here. So we'll go through this a lot quicker. But to your point earlier, Blaine, around there's growth and innovation. There's such a symbiotic relationship in that slide with mindset, growth, innovation, right? The tactics on how you grow, the things you do to grow, the things you do to innovate, we can't tell you here because we don't know your business. But the principles of how you think of this from a mindset and leadership role to move your team to co-create coordinated movement, live inside of these principles. Item 1, right? Symptom sticks to what's always worked. That's that status quo, which becomes a sin inside of innovation. I'm comfortable, therefore I don't need to stretch.
Yep.
I don't need to think creatively. Don't have to do that.
Yeah. And because we're sticking to what always worked, any new ideas get shot down pretty quickly. It's kind of like,
right.
We tried that 15 years ago. That didn't work. Or, God, that's a crazy idea. I don't know anybody that would sign on to that.
Yeah.
Those sorts of things, and you'll hear those in meetings all the time. Those sort of rejoinders when somebody floats a trial balloon.
Yeah.
It's,
Heard it today.
Yep.
And waits for perfect. There's a whole series that we've done. Go find the series that we talked about in decisions. God, I think there was like 6 different powers of use that we did just on decision making.
Yep.
One of them was around perfection. You're waiting for perfection instead of progress, and that's that fail forward fast. And when you see that as a symptom in your organization, you'll hear people say, "Well, that's how do we know? How do we trust? Did you get the data? Who gave you the data?
Yeah.
Is the data
the speed of trust?"
Yep. Perfection is the enemy of execution. So
Yep.
don't wait for perfect. And last and final, doctor.
You as a leader are an exemplar. And I mentioned earlier, people give you what they perceive you're willing to accept. They never give you what you ask for. They'll give you what they perceive you're willing to accept. That is a function of this. If you're not getting what you want from your organization, from your people, take a look at yourself. There's nobody out there but you. I mean, literally, there is nobody out there but you. And all you're seeing is reflections back about how you're showing up. And we go back all the way to the definition of leadership. It's about influencing, which is a state of being. And you influence by how you show up. It's called leadership presence.
Yeah.
You're not modeling, and this is symptomatic. If you want innovation and you're not getting it, it's likely because in many cases you're not modeling curiosity or openness. Yeah. Your state of being is the pinch point. And there is a solution to that. There's a way to actually open that up, but you've got to be willing to be transparent, vulnerable, and vulnerable requires risk. And ultimately, authenticity comes into play here, which is a whole completely different conversation that we could work with. And we will at some point in time. But these are some symptoms. If you're not getting the kind of innovation and creativity that you'd like to have from the people in your organization, from your team members or whatever it might be, these are some of the symptomatic pieces that you can kind of go, this is present. Let's lift the lid up on this and see what's under there. And what can I do about it? Which is actually where we're going next. So what's the next step? Boy, how about that for a segue?
That was smooth.
Wasn't that good? Hey,
that was very good.
I've been practicing in front of a mirror.
That was very good.
So what is the next step? We have got this little quote here, and we've talked about this a bunch. Nothing happens.
Oh, yeah.
Nothing moves. Yeah.
Yep.
You got to move. You got to be willing to take the bull by the horns and actually do something with it. It's not going to work until you actually do something different. Yeah. I'm not even going to go into the definition of insanity.
No. Yeah.
But again, here, 20 to 30% of participants in personal or professional development programs follow through with action plans, or only about 20 to 30%. So, you've got 80+% that do not follow through because there's not additional support provided. They try to do it on their own. And when you're wrestling with mindset, your eyes point out, your ears are listening for things out there. I mean, your whole sensory apparatus is organized to pay attention to the external world. Mindset is internal. You need people, you need resources, you need peer groups that will give you information about what do they observe going on in your mindset that you're not noticing. And that's what we want to be able to encourage you to do. How do you begin to put yourself in a position to have information that you're not aware of? Awareness precedes choice. Greater awareness, you now have more choices available to you about how you actually move. And leadership is about movement. Yeah. You don't get effective movement unless you have high awareness. Developing the capacity to continuously start over. How do you do that? Get information about what's not working.
Yep.
And what is working.
And what is working.
Yeah.
Exactly. Go learn new things.
So we got something for you here. This is free. Not going to cost you a nickel. Leadership Transformation Challenge next week, April 28th through May 2nd, starting at 9 a.m. Pacific, approximately about an hour and a half. Actually, about an hour and 15 minutes, I think, 90 minutes or so.
Something like that. Till we quit talking.
Till we quit talking. Yeah, that's it. We're going to be taking over 5 days elements of both the leadership universe model and the four pillar model and expand and expound on them. And the idea behind this challenge is, and it'll be a working challenge. We're only going to talk for about 30 minutes in this. We're going to be putting people into breakout groups where they can begin to explore, how does this apply to what it is that I'm doing or what it is that I'm thinking of doing, that sort of stuff. At the end of the 5 days, the intent is you will have what you need to do to create a 30-day action plan that you can then go out and actually begin to implement. And it will, be pretty robust. It's going to, how many pages is in that action plan when we put it together? It's,
oh God,
it's a pretty thick.
It's over 90. I think it's over 90. I mean, it's a
yeah,
9
you got
pound
you've got an action plan.
It's a 9-pound document.
90-pound document. Yes.
Yeah.
So you're going to end up with a 30-day plan that is actionable, that you will begin to see immediate results off of. And this is free. Dolan and I decided a long time ago, I mean, we've got gray hair. We're more interested in people learning how to lead effectively, because this world needs more effective leadership than it's getting today in so many ways. So what we're doing here is we're making this stuff available. This is our best thinking. This is what we know how to do. So we invite you, and Afino, it's feel invited, not obligated.
Yep.
There is absolutely no obligation to this. We'll be recording it. And if you've registered, you'll have access to the recording. If you don't register, you won't have access to the recording.
Right.
But we want people that are intent on doing something with this to have access to it. So that's the invitation. You've got a URL there and a QR code. So feel free to just scan the QR code.
High tech, baby.
There you go.
High tech.
High tech. We're learning. We're learning.
Exactly. Yeah, do come join us. We've seen, this is number 4. This is the 4th time we've done this.
Yep.
And every time we do it, it's a little different. It's a little different. We continue to improve in our look. We look better every time.
Every time. Yep.
With content, things will continue to change. So do come join. We would encourage it. That's all I have to add. I would just strongly encourage it. Come hang out.
Come hang out. Yeah. Again, it's an hour. If you can't invest an hour in your own development each day, something's off.
Problem.
Something's off. There's a problem there. No judgment involved in this at all, but
no.
We want you to succeed. Come on down.
No,
Come on down.
It is.
Tell them what they won, Bob.
Yeah, exactly. It's a what are you thinking moment. All right. Anyway, on that note,
so we're out of here.
Growth and innovation. Great chat, Mr. Bartlett.
Next week, Power of You is taking on authenticity and
accountability.
There you go.
We're into accountability next week, which is that's the pucker up factor right there. There you go. Ooh, pucker up.
Okay. We'll see everybody at the challenge, and we'll see you also at the next Power of You next Thursday. Take care. Thanks for being here.